Hey guys, I'm Melhorn. In this video, I'm going to talk about the difference between a live well and a bait tank. All right guys, I see this question come up a lot on some of the Facebook forums, and I've gotten a message before from people asking about, can I use a bait tank for a live well and can I use a live well for a bait tank? Well, what I'm going to do is go over some of the differences between the two so that you can make a good decision on how you use these two things. Let's talk about a bait tank first. A bait tank is, well, what the name says. It's a tank to put bait in. Generally speaking, it's a standalone system that has two important things. One, filtration. The filtration is designed to get scales and other biomatter out of the water so that the dissolved oxygen is easier to be absorbed by the water. And the other thing is some type of aeration, some way to put dissolved oxygen into that water to keep those bait fish alive. Now, ideally, on a good quality bait tank, all of this stuff is housed inside one container. The reason I say ideally is because the homemade tanks generally have all kinds of pipes and contraptions sticking off the side for the plumbing on these things, whether it be for the filtration, for the pipes that are recirculating the water. The problem with this is that all these pipes and things sticking off the side are kind of a recipe for disaster. It's one more thing hanging outside of the tank that is exposed that somebody can accidentally step on, an anchor can fall on, a cooler can slide onto, and bust one of these pipes or one of these pumps loose. Now, obviously not everybody has the money to buy a bait tank. Bait tanks can be expensive. The cheaper, smaller ones start at about $300, and the bigger, larger ones go to well over $1,000. So making one at home may be your only option early on, but if you can afford a quality, well-built bait tank, they are worth the money and they will last you for years. Now let's talk about live wells for a second. Live wells can be a standalone unit that you take in and out of a boat, similar to what you would do with a bait tank, or in many like Catfish tournament boats, like on the Stormcat, the live well is built into the hull of the boat. It's very convenient. You don't have to undo anything, disconnect anything, take it in and out. It's there all the time. The purpose of a live well is to keep fish alive, similar to a bait tank, but in most cases it is either for tournament fish that have been caught in a tournament that you're trying to get to the scales to weigh in, or it's for fish that you're catching that you're going to take home to clean, to eat. Now, most well-designed live wells will have constant water flow built into them. In other words, water will come in, water will go out. The purpose for this is the most oxygenated water is in the upper part of the water column of whatever body you're fishing. Pumping in that fresh oxygenated water and letting it go back out is the best way to give them the dissolved oxygen that they need and let the wastewater flow out. Now, some of the more well-built tournament live wells have added aeration. What this is a Venturi type system that allows air to be pulled into the water that is being pumped into the tank. This mechanical aeration will add some oxygen to the water while you're waiting in line at a tournament weigh-in or running down the lake to a weigh-in, taking your fish home, driving down the road. It creates a certain level of aeration that will help keep the fish alive. It is not as good as having fresh water coming in, but it is something that will work and get you by until you can get that fresh water moving. Now, generally speaking, live wells don't have filtration, and that is probably one of the biggest differences between a bait tank and between a live well. The other difference is that a bait tank is really more designed to keep bait alive for hours and hours and hours and hours, sometimes days. Many times people will put bait fish into a bait tank for a fishing trip that may span 2 or 3, 4 days. Live wells are not really designed for that. Live wells are designed for an 8 to 10 hour time span, and that is their main focus by design. So the question comes, can you use a bait tank as a live well and a live well as a bait tank? Well, If you're keeping bait for a short period of time, say you're going out on the lake, you're catching some bait, you're going to throw it in your live well that's built into your boat, and at the end of the day, you're done, you're throwing those fish back, sure, it'll work just fine. Can you use a bait tank for a live well for your tournament fish? Well, depending on the size of the fish that you're catching and just how big your bait tank is, you can. Now, it's probably not an ideal setup for 40, 50, 60 pound fish, especially if you're trying to keep your bait in there alive and happy at the same time. But yes, it will work. The bottom line is that these two tanks are designed for two totally different purposes. While similar, the end goal is something different for both of them. So ideally, you need both. Probably the live well will be the better cross that will do both, at least in the short term. So keep that in mind when you're making a decision on your next boat, your next bait tank, and your next live well for your next fishing trip. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're gonna like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know, just watch them both. They're both good.